Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 5 of Steam Feed TV. Tonight we're going to be doing some talking about some two or three of the topics that are on the tips of everybody's tongues in social media. And before we get started, I want to introduce the group. Everybody take a moment and introduce yourselves, starting with Randy.
I'm Randy Bowden. I'm a consultant in marketing and branding, and one of the original Steam Feed authors. Proud to be.
And Kim.
Hi, I'm Kim Yule. I'm coming to you today from Macau, China, and you can find me on kimyule.com.
Jen.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Kane, and I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm a marketing consultant.
Jeff.
All right, I'm Jeff, and I'm in the middle of Michigan on a farm, and I'm a marketing consultant as well.
And last but not least, Brooke.
Hello, it's Brooke Ballard, the B Squared behind B Squared Media, and you can find me at b2socialmedia.com.
All right. Well, before we get into our questions, I have one thing I have to do to pay the bills, and I want to make sure that everybody understands if they are going to Content Marketing World, September 8th through the 11th. Be sure when you register to use the discount code STEAMFEED, capital S, capital F, all one word, and you'll get $100 off your registration. Remember, SteamFeed is sponsors of that event, and we'd like to throw that out to all the people who listen to SteamFeed Radio, who go to steamfeed.com, and who come here to SteamFeed TV. So there you go. All right. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. The first question I wanted to talk about is just recently Apple and Google have agreed to drop all their lawsuits against each other. My question to the panel is, does the general public really care about this? I mean, is this something that is going to end up in the general public's lap? I mean, do they care? And is it just a case of rich kids fighting in court, in rich kid court? So go ahead, guys.
Yes.
It's rich kids fighting in rich kid court. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
I mean, the only people that cared about this were the comedians who now it was fodder for them on their Nightline TV shows. You know, really, Apple and Google have all this money. They're just suing each other. They're pissed off about whatever each other's doing. I don't think it really matters, in my opinion. I don't think most people really care too much. People like, us, we might because it's something interesting in the tech world, but generally, no.
I agree with Jeff. I don't think the general public even blips on their radar. They don't care. Why would they care? I mean, there's some sense of apathy out there about the news, and I think we'll get into that a little further in the program. But I think as a whole, people just gloss over events such as that, unless you're watching a stock price or something like that. You really don't even, it doesn't even register to you.
I think it only becomes interesting if they develop something from this. I mean, I sort of look at this as maybe a first step in a future partnership of some kind, or at least I'd like to see that. But other than that, it's not important. So I'd like to, think that something good is coming down the pike from it, but who knows?
Well, I think, and I would throw out where many of the people that may know about it are people that are pretty, in depth into the social media world. The average Joe just wants to make sure that his wife got the message he sent and that his aunt got the pictures from the party. Make sense?
Well, that's the point. That's the point, Jerry. I think those of us who maybe work on these various platforms and use these various devices might pay attention to it. But the average person that's on Facebook or whatever their flavor of the month is, they don't really care about that. They're just kind of worrying about the picture, make sure the picture populates.
Well, with their earning revenues and such, I mean, all it does is, these lawsuits just show the greed of the companies anyway. So it's like, it's just wasting time. It's wasting dollars. There's really, beyond that, nobody really cares. So,
why would you say greed, Kim? Though I mean, they're successful. Both of those are successful and very progressive companies that are bringing, valuable products to the marketplace. Why would it be greed?
Well, I just think that they're, just with technology and how it develops as it is, there is so much overlap and similar technology out there to go into patent court when you're making billions of dollars, and there's so much market share, and you're tying up, you know, all of these legal resources. For the average Joe in the communities who's struggling to pay their bills, that's how they view it. I mean, they just see these companies going after bigger and more dollars. They just want their phone to work. And
what do you all think about the amount of dollars that some of these companies are being ordered to pay? I mean, I think you hit on something very good, Kim, because I think what happens is the average Joe sees this and just closes their eyes right off the bat because, boom, they can't relate to having to pay a $112 billion fine.
What's an arbitrary number?
The average Joe doesn't see this. The average Joe knows a lot about Solange and Jay-Z having a fight in an elevator. They don't know jack about a lawsuit about two multi-million-dollar corporations. It's just not important.
They're private companies, so people don't really pay attention to that part. Now, I heard today where the IRS, you know, it was exposed that the IRS was paying an enormous amount of money for, you know, overtime to union employees that they shouldn't be doing, but it was legal or something like that. Now, the average employee might their ears might turn to that, but private companies, I don't think they really pay attention to it that much.
Well, and I think too, it's a matter of, there's two things at play here. There's capitalism, right, which allows us to be such a great country and take an idea and build off of it and make it new or our own and not necessarily stealing. But there's also a differentiation. I think a lot of these companies are out there doing the exact same thing and they're not differentiating themselves enough. So I think for me, I'm like with Kim, it might be an interesting path that we go down now where they do try to veer off and become different from one another, or maybe, as Kim said, they decide to work together.
Working together would be really nice, wouldn't it? I mean, playing together in the pond would be good.
It would, but I don't see it happening.
I just think there's more behind the lawsuit than obviously they're coming out with now. I just can't imagine that they're going in. Apple's been so litigation hungry in the, you know, up to this point. They litigate at a drop of a hat. So for them to come to this agreement, there's just got to be something more behind it, I think. But speculation.
Speculation's good. Speculate away.
Well, beyond that, that's all I can think of is that something good's going to come.
All right. Well, let's go on to the next subject then, which probably is going to take a little bit more time. What I want to talk about is as you all well know, the FCC has decided that they are going to be looking at something called net neutrality, which, if this goes through, is going to make those of us who use the internet, everybody from top to bottom, it's going to make things a little bit different. The big players and the folks with the big money, as we were just talking about, are going to have an advantage. And my question is, if you look at what's been going on around the world, there's been a lot of stuff going on around the world. Recently, in Saudi Arabia, a blogger called Raif Badawi, he was just sentenced to 10 years in jail, 1,000 lashes, and he was fined 1 million rials, which is basically $266,000 American. And further from that, the Gulf states more and more Gulf states are passing laws with strict punishments for, quote, misuse of the internet. And I think that's kind of going to be an interesting thing. Do you think that the FCC is doing the same type of thing with the internet here in an Americanized kind of way because they know they can't sentence people to lashes? And I mean, this blogger just blogged something against where he questioned some Islamic rules, and this is some serious stuff. Where do you all think this is going to be going in the U.S. and globally?
This will probably lead to government regulation. I can just see that the road is going down that way. I think the government is looking for ways to build revenue, and there's this huge, massive, untapped revenue-generating thing called the internet that I think ultimately, I think that's where they are trying to go. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. I hope they don't.
But they're doing it at the expense of freedom of speech. In my mind, this is a total violation of freedom of speech, which is what the government is partly founded on. So there's a mixed message there.
That's exactly it. There is, they can't, I don't know. I don't see net neutrality as really having anything similar to what happened in the Middle East there. I mean, the Middle East doesn't have freedom of speech. You can't talk about your religion negatively. I mean, he did break the laws of his country blogging. Do I think it's right that he got this sentence? No. But here in the United States, there's no way they can have those kinds of restrictions on the internet. But if you're talking like that in countries where there are restrictions, you do need to be careful. I don't think there is any type of international policy that can apply here.
But is the United States doing the same thing in the only way that they can go about it? You see what I'm saying?
I think with the United States,
I think there's a big shift, and it's a dangerous slope that is going to change the landscape of what we know as the internet today. And it's driven on commerce. It's driven on money, and that's what the U.S. is doing with that. It is in a way to stifle the small voice and give credit to the voice that has the most money, and make it more into a media type application that we've seen before. They passed it. The FCC passed their rules last week, so I think you're going to start seeing some shift there.
No, they haven't passed any rules, from what I understand.
Well, they're going to pass it, and they're in favor of it.
Right. Right. They've cleared the path to do what they want to do. And see, I think that the problem for the United States is they're right now in the throes of giving to the poor, taking from the rich and giving to the poor, and at the same time, on the other hand, they're making only the rich able to use their voice.
Well, everybody thought we'd be able to keep our health care too, but I think that's a big part of this. Randy's right. There's we thought that things were one way, and all of a sudden, policymakers are making a shift in how things are because they feel like they know better, or they feel like that there's something missing.
Well, even with the introduction of the net neutrality at the very beginning, they've already made some, at least public, changes to what they're going after based upon the reaction of the public. So, I think it's just important for people to continue to voice their opinions on the subject, to get educated like anything, because if there's enough uproar and, enough comments out there, they're going to listen to it. They can't, I think it would be very, very difficult for them to not claim that they're taking interests or being influenced by people with money if their policies are doing that. I don't think the small voice, while it might be small and individual, collectively, those are much bigger than the voices that have the money. So as long as everybody stays vocal, I think, they're trying to create policy as we speak. So now's the time to get out there and be active about it.
Do you think that the small voice collectively can do enough to? Is this such a big train for the government that no matter what the vast majority of the internet says, it doesn't matter?
I think we all need to come together on this, no matter if you're an internet user and you want to continue to use the internet in the way that we're using it now, you need to be writing your congressman or signing the petition or whatever. You need to be doing something. This isn't something to sit by and be a bystander and watch happen. You have
realistically, I mean, we're a savvy crew that would do such things, and the vast majority of my network, particularly on Facebook, again, they know, I mean, the news of the day is don't wash your jeans anymore. That's all people are talking about today. And I just
don't wash them.
And what I fear most about these rules passing is that most people aren't even going to know that they're getting sold subpar service. They're not going to know that they're the fast lane.
Jennifer, don't you think that's the way the society is today? I mean, it's kind of.
I think that this is going to happen, and we are largely on many issues an uninformed public by voluntary. and that this, the government wants to make some money, or corporations want to make some money, and arrangements are going to be made and deals are going to be cut. I recently read an article that said that the National Nutritionist Association had their annual conference, and it is catered by McDonald's. Now, these are things that we learn about, and we're like, wow, no wonder we're so fat here in this country, because there are things that just happen, and people just don't know about it. And I fear that this may become one of those things that just happens, and people are not even really mildly inconvenienced. Their life kind of continues on, and everything looks the same on their screen, and so they think it is the same, and it just kind of like just goes on. Do you think this
is being pushed by the government or big business? Because think about it, if big business gets this to go through, they've got a clear path to do whatever they want, and the little guys can't really say much.
Well, it is big business. It is.
Yeah, for sure.
And as I said earlier, well, yeah, but it's money driven, and it's PACs, and it's it's everything that we have grown this government we have as citizens we've allowed to grow. That's what it is. I mean, I think countries such as, and I think I read today where a lot of European countries, they've summoned the Google people and all that to come in and talk about these privacy issues in their lands. I don't think that I read today where Congress passed legislation about privacy, but basically they stripped it down and said that phone companies could keep their records for 18 months, and during that 18 months, the NSA has the right to look at anything. Plus, it also gives them the right to look at mobile phones, which they didn't have the right to look at before. This country has changed a lot, and people, I think the average consumer, the average person out there, the average citizen of the United States really doesn't pay attention to that.
Brooke, what do you think?
He said it right there. It's less about big business. Big business is the front for government, because if this gets passed, and big business is basically getting these channels that are faster and better and whatnot, the government will be able to do what they want, especially when it comes to things like net neutrality through those companies, because they own those. I mean, the government basically is the last stand between those companies and ultimate power. I think it's a big business front, really, for government to come in and be more controlling and more regulated, like Jeff mentioned earlier.
And I think you're all on a really good point, and it actually goes with a gift that I passed around today. I should have sent it to you guys, but I didn't realize this was going to go this way. And it showed government, the makeup of Congress over the last, 25, 30 years. And it was amazing how in the beginning there was very many veterans and very few business people. And now it's completely changed, where it's mostly made up, Congress is mostly made up of business people. So I think you guys are all right on the money that this is a business money-making venture, and it may just go through and nobody's going to be able to do anything about it. Interesting. Great insight on that, guys. Okay, so finally, let's talk about our friend Facebook. And this is a good segue into what we were talking about, kind of. Today, Facebook's head of ad product management, Mike Hudak, kind of had I wouldn't say a meltdown, but it was more than a rant. It was kind of like a tizzy fit. But he had some interesting things to say. And I think the best line out of the whole thing for me was, he said, it's hard to tell who's to blame, but someone should fix this shit. And what he's talking about is how the media has become la la land. It's just not. People are getting the media channels. Like he asked, does anybody watch the evening news anymore? Does anybody know? I mean, the next generation that's coming up is getting more of their news from Jon Stewart than they are from the evening news. So I wanted to throw that out to see what you folks thought and where that's going.
It's going down the toilet, buddy. I think he was spot on. I mean, and I think in a sense what the undertone of his rant was that Facebook was a legitimate media source, and that's not necessarily true. I think that Facebook has become a media source for many, and as Jennifer said, the topic of the day was, freeze your freaking stylish blue jeans. Don't wash it.
It kind of reminds me of the one-child policy in China, and I've joked with my husband that when our daughter goes to college, there will be 1 million eligible young Chinese men looking for wives that are coming to college in America because they're seeing fallout from limiting something in their culture. And what we are doing is limiting things, and even the person who works at Facebook doesn't realize how much Facebook limits things. We live and die by the algorithm that these big corporations have established, and the algorithms create a window through which we view the world, and that window is becoming more narrow. And so, you know, what will be the fallout from that? Because it's a very huge shift for our whole society to make, and I think there will be repercussions down the road.
And tell me, how many people understand the algorithms that Facebook, Twitter, Google use? How many people understand?
You'd have to go, that question, Jerry, you'd have to go back to what we were talking about. The average person can't even tell you what an algorithm is.
Yeah.
Correct.
They're just sitting on Facebook talking and reading about the news of the day.
Well,
You
the
know,
average
what's the
person
current thing is.
doesn't even realize that when they're going to Google and typing something into the search bar, that that's not an authentic search, because Google is giving you results based on your cookies and your history. So even when you go to Google, it's not a non-biased search, and most people don't even understand that. So we're so limited by these algorithms.
How is that?
And Brooke brings up a good point. You hear people talk about the fact that they look at something and they see some article they wrote or some place they searched or something like that. They don't realize that Google is tailoring that for Brooke or Brandy. You know, they don't. It's like they just typed something into Google and it miraculously found this thing that's Jennifer Kane, whatever. You know, and they don't realize that is how that works. I mean, you know, so the average person is I don't want to say ignorant. They're just clueless about it, or they don't care.
Well, and I think that it's so pervasive and so complex. I mean, for us to understand what Facebook does is challenging. It changes all the time. It's very complicated. It's based on an algorithm that it's hard to understand. It's hard to explain to our clients. And I regularly have friends in my network, people come up to me and say, "Why does Facebook suck so much lately? Why don't I see any of my friends post? Why do they know I have a child when I never said that publicly?" You know, people don't understand how this happens. It is a little bit of like voodoo magic.
Wouldn't you, the panel, wouldn't you say that Facebook is really a frightening type platform that we all dance around a lot? Because we, you know, whether you go on that platform in a minimalist way or you go full bore, they are able to garnish anything and sell anything about you, and not only that, but trap you. I mean, because you develop these relationships and you keep coming back. So what do you think about that?
Ignorance is bliss. I think if I didn't know what I know from what we do with Facebook, I would still love it. But now it's I hate it, but I can't leave it. Exactly. I'm trapped. I'm
The
stuck.
necessary evil.
Yeah.
I read the book, The Circle, that came out about 6 or 7 months ago, and it's a kind of Google, Facebookish sort of company that is in the process of taking over the world. And a lot of tech people read it and said, "Oh, well, you know, we couldn't do live video streaming of our lives and blah blah," and like picking apart the details. And I think the more interesting part of the book is the fundamentals of what this person is taking to an extreme in the book is dead on occurring right now. And I think it's a book that we'll look back on in a decade and say, you know, remember when this was kind of crazy ideas, and now we do a lot of these things.
Yeah.
Well, what about his comment about how? Can anybody? Let me ask the question. Does anybody know who Tom Brokaw's replacement is?
I don't.
Wait.
I don't.
I know about my jeans, and I should freeze them. I know all about that.
Actually,
I posted a video about freezing your jeans on my Facebook page today. It's pretty cool.
Actually, the top story right now is how a bill made it through the worst Congress ever.
I saw that.
Which,
Yeah.
that's a little better than freezing your jeans, but.
Well, I don't know, Jerry. You could argue that. I mean, you know, really.
I think part of the argument is what we talked about earlier, is that not only is the information that we're getting, you know, we're talking about how America has become dumbed down, but is it because of what the media is putting out? I think he's putting out a straight challenge. Some of the comments, when you read the article, some of the comments that he made in his post were pretty straightforward. I mean, I think he's challenging media to step up to the plate, and I think it's a great thing.
But I think this is an issue today. There are so many media outlets, digital and delivered via television today, and people have a choice, right? So and most of the media outlets have pundits on there. They're not traditional journalists in the sense that what we grew up in and knew as a journalist was. It's mostly opinion, and it frightens me. Coming from a family who was, I was raised by a diehard journalist, newspaper man, and coming from that and knowing the history of that and what it entails. Today, you can write a diatribe of something on Facebook, and if you're lucky, it picks up, and all of a sudden you get a fan base of people believing what you're talking about. It's easy to fan that.
He says that most of the TV stations and most of the newspapers have become ghosts of themselves.
They strip. I mean, newspapers now. Most of the news now. Several of the major papers that are still intact, but most of the newspapers in our cities today are farmed out to freelance writers from around the country. Most of the news in there, there is no local news anymore. There is no local community.
The local news sucks. Here's why I watch Jon Stewart and not my local news, because all they talk about is murder this, rape that, blah, blah, blah. It's all like doom and fire and brimstone, and that's not why I'm watching the news. That's not telling me anything. Like, I'm really sorry those people died, but that's really not what I want to turn on the news and find out about it.
That we must have hit a nerve because Kim, who was joining us from China, is gone. So,
Kim, who lives in Bangkok, who's going through a military coup right now. So.
Or maybe the Chinese government heard what we were talking about and they shut her down.
Shut her off.
There'll be no more of that talk.
That's right.
But yeah, I think I do believe it's an interesting point that he makes, and I love that the fact that he brings up there were some things that started like the Huffington Post, which he thought he had high hopes for, and they just didn't deliver. And
there's also another thing, and we all realize we all see this happening. Those of us who practice our profession in this space a lot, is that a stoic publication can make a misstep, and in a day or two they will be trashed in the thing. In other words, Forbes was this and now they're that, or Huffington Post was this and now they're that. Most of these digital built platforms are based on sensationalism. They are. They don't. And then they sprinkle in. They try to. They launch and it's sensationalism, and then they try to sprinkle in some political or some real news that gives them some kind of credence. And they never were founded that way.
Well, you have to think about we all could be writers on Huffington Post, and I shouldn't be. Do you know what I mean? Like the fact that that everybody can be a star and a thought leader now is it's challenging because not everybody has amazing thoughts that we should be reading. Not everybody understands FCC regulations. They don't understand journalistic ethics. And so what you have is a lot of people who are positioning themselves as thought leaders on a myriad of topics, and that's kind of dumbing down the pool of information.
But the audience is a part. The audience owns a part of this. If you take a look at cable TV, you have the A&E channel, you have the History Channel, you have all different kinds of channels that started on cable that were all about the arts and history. Bravo, all this stuff. What are they showing now?
Reality.
It's all reality. It's not even real reality.
It's not even. It's
Randy,
not reality.
Randy, let me finish. It's not even real reality. It's reality that's scripted.
Yeah.
So and that's why did they do that? Because nobody was watching the real stuff. Nobody cares about the New York Symphony.
I think it all goes back to self-awareness, though, because it was like Jennifer was saying, like, you shouldn't be a writer on Huffington Post, so you say, but you have the self-awareness, right, and the introspection to say, I am not the type of person who should be writing to this, whereas other people, they think they actually are taking other people's ideas in a lot of cases and passing them off as their own wonderful spark of ingenuity or training program or reality TV show or whatever it is. It's a lack of self-awareness on both the celebrities' parts and then the audience too, because yeah, you've got to be lacking self-awareness to want.
I think that the reality programming that is prevalent on most channels today, Nat Geo, Home and Garden, and all those channels, is a look at where we're going with our society. I mean, to me, I hate what they call reality programming to me, because it is such an insane. And if they would just say it's the new Beverly Hillbillies, it would be different. But when they use the word reality like this, this is what we like. You know, we like people riding around in boats shooting gators. I know people make a living riding around in boats shooting gators, and they're proud sort and all that. But, you know, one or two scenes of that in my mind is okay, and I see it, but it doesn't give me much thought in my mind, right? I don't think very much. Like if I were to watch a movie that was crafted around a more engaging story or something like that. So to me, I think it's a sign of, and I would have to wonder what other nations who see Honey Boo Boo would really think of this country.
Well, on that note, I would like to thank everybody once again for that. Was great. The Housewives of Honey Boo Boo. I love it. Thanks everybody for being here, and thanks everybody for listening. Welcome to Steam Feed TV, and come back in 2 weeks for episode number 6. Thank y'all.
Bye.
Bye.